Here are the stories shaping the world this morning and why they matter.
In eastern Indonesia, rescue crews are still trying to reach communities cut off by a powerful earthquake that struck on Saturday and has killed at least 68 people. Authorities reported the quake at magnitude 7.7. Hundreds of people were injured, nearly 13,000 have been forced from their homes, and more than 900 buildings were damaged. The impact is being felt most sharply in rural areas, where cracked roads, damaged buildings, and limited medical access can slow every part of the emergency response. In Manggarai, residents said homes were too dangerous to enter after deep cracks appeared in walls. A church was heavily damaged. At one hospital, damage forced staff to move a pharmacy into a tent, while doctors and nurses focused first on critical patients. The immediate priority is search and rescue, along with shelter, clean water, food, and medical care for families who may not be able to return home soon. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where earthquakes are frequent, but the challenge after each disaster is intensely local. Reaching villages, keeping hospitals functioning, and making sure displaced families are not left to manage the next days alone. Authorities and aid workers are now working through damaged infrastructure to find survivors and support communities that have lost homes, gathering places, and basic services in a matter of minutes. The United States and South Korea have begun their annual Ulchi Freedom Shield military exercise, despite President Donald Trump saying he had ordered the Pentagon to substantially reduce American participation. South Korea says the drills are proceeding as scheduled and are due to run through August 27th. The exercise is designed to prepare for a range of threats, including possible drone strikes and cyber attacks. This year, planners are also taking account of North Korea's dispatch of troops to Russia. According to Yonhap, field maneuvers are expected to be on a similar or smaller scale than last year. North Korea has condemned the drills, with its foreign ministry saying Pyongyang would reject threats or challenges by exercising self-defense. The warning comes after North Korea launched ballistic missiles during March drills and fired what appeared to be ballistic missiles on August 6th and August 12th. The politics around the exercise are also shifting. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is seeking dialogue with North Korea, while Trump has cited his relationship with Kim Jong-un and said he instructed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to scale down the drills. For ordinary people on the Korean peninsula, the question is not only military readiness, but whether diplomacy can reduce the risk of miscalculation. Large-scale drills are meant to deter conflict, but they can also raise tensions, especially when missile launches and political messaging occur in close succession.
A new diplomatic push is underway over Gaza, with Trump administration envoy Jared Kushner meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday after earlier talks with Hamas in Egypt. Hamas has endorsed a 15-point Trump plan for Gaza, while Netanyahu has refused to back it unless Hamas fully disarms first. The stakes remain urgent for civilians. Palestinians in Gaza are still living under an Israeli blockade, with sporadic airstrikes continuing. Families there are weighing every diplomatic visit against the daily realities of food shortages, damaged homes, displacement, and fear. Some residents expressed hope that the latest effort could help end the war. Others were skeptical, saying political promises have too often failed to produce safety. Netanyahu, who is seeking re-election as Israel's prime minister, has said Hamas must be excluded from any future threat and must surrender its weapons. An Israeli speaker connected to the debate said any solution should exclude Hamas. Hamas, for its part, has endorsed the proposed plan, but has not accepted Netanyahu's demand for full disarmament as a precondition. The diplomatic opening matters because even partial progress could affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who need food, medical care, and protection. But the gap between the parties remains wide. The central questions are still the same. Who governs Gaza? Who guarantees security? How humanitarian aid reaches civilians at scale? And whether a ceasefire can hold long enough to become something more durable. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers have continued a siege of the Palestinian village of Qusra, where residents say electricity and water have been cut and some families have been blocked from food and basic supplies. The village has been under pressure for just over a week, and United Nations vehicles have delivered supplies. Residents and rights groups describe the harassment as part of a wider effort to push Palestinians from their homes. 3 families were cut off from basic necessities. One resident said Israeli soldiers arrested him while he was trying to restore electricity. Rights groups say repeated settler attacks, blocked access, and damage to infrastructure create conditions that make normal life nearly impossible. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are illegal under international law. The latest events in Kusra come as Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced plans to transfer West Bank law enforcement powers from the army to Israeli police. Critics say that would be a step toward annexation because it would deepen civilian Israeli control over occupied territory. For families in Kusra, these legal and political debates are not abstract. They affect whether children can attend school, whether homes have electricity, whether food can reach the village, and whether residents feel safe staying on land their families have lived on for generations. The most immediate need is access: water, power, food, medical help, and protection from harassment. The broader issue is accountability, especially when armed settlers and state security forces operate in the same space and Palestinians have little practical protection.
Belgium is battling one of the largest wildfires in its history, with a major blaze burning since Friday in the country's east near the German border. The fire is moving through the Oates-Fagnes Nature Reserve, an area of peatland and dense vegetation that can be difficult to contain once flames take hold. Hundreds of firefighters have been working to control the fire. Rain has brought some relief, but authorities are still managing a dangerous and complex response. Several Belgian towns have been evacuated, forcing families to leave homes with little certainty about when they can return. European neighbors have sent help. Germany, Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands have provided reinforcements, and Dutch helicopters have been used to drop water on the blaze. The cross-border response is a reminder that climate-linked disasters do not stop at national boundaries, and that regional cooperation can make a practical difference when local crews are stretched. France is also dealing with the aftermath of severe summer fires. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu visited the Gironde region after a major fire earlier in the season forced large evacuations. He said the French government would increase funding for towns relocating people whose homes were destroyed. For residents, the recovery can last far longer than the fire itself. People need temporary housing, insurance help, mental health support, and a plan for rebuilding in places where heat and drought are changing the risk map. The hopeful sign is that countries are not responding alone. Shared equipment, emergency funds, and public investment can reduce the burden on towns facing disasters that are becoming harder to treat as rare events.
A 60-day negotiation window between the United States and Iran has expired without a final agreement, leaving the two countries divided over maritime traffic, sanctions, Iran's nuclear program, and conditions for ending the fighting. A memorandum of understanding signed in June set a 60-day timeline for talks. Vice President J.D. Vance said the period began on June 18th, making Sunday the latest date for a final deal. But little in the document was implemented, and both sides continued attacks during the negotiation period. One major issue is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital route for global energy shipments. The talks included ending a U.S. maritime blockade and resuming vessel traffic through the strait. Tehran has listed 6 conditions for reopening it. Sanctions relief and Iran's nuclear program remain at the center of the dispute. President Donald Trump said he thought the memorandum was over. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said there was no ceasefire that needed extension. Those statements suggest both governments are trying to preserve room to maneuver while avoiding language that could make compromise harder. For ordinary people, the breakdown matters in concrete ways. Maritime disruptions can raise shipping costs and energy prices. Sanctions affect access to goods, medicine, jobs, and banking. Continued military confrontation increases risk for service members, sailors, port workers, and families across the region. The absence of a final agreement does not mean diplomacy is impossible, but it does mean the next steps will require clearer commitments than the first 60 days produced.
In Japan, communities in Chiba Prefecture are beginning a difficult cleanup after unprecedented rain caused deadly flooding east of Tokyo. Authorities said 10 people died and 2 people are missing. The downpours began Thursday evening, and Chiba City received about 3 times its average August rainfall in just half a day. The flooding affected more than 2,000 homes. Prefectural officials said 2 residences were destroyed. For many families, the damage is not only structural. Furniture, appliances, family records, and personal belongings have been soaked or ruined. Residents have been bringing damaged possessions to a temporary disposal site as they begin the slow work of clearing out homes. Officials in Chiba City said about 2,500 abandoned vehicles were found on Saturday and Sunday, many left on roadsides after drivers were forced to leave them behind. Those vehicles are now complicating recovery by blocking roads and slowing access for cleanup crews and emergency services. Japan has strong disaster response systems, but extreme rain can overwhelm even well-prepared communities when water rises quickly. The next phase is practical and labor-intensive, finding the missing, supporting bereaved families, restoring roads, removing debris, checking homes for safety, and making sure older residents and people with disabilities are not isolated. The broader challenge is adaptation. As heavy rainfall events become more intense in many regions, local governments face growing pressure to improve drainage, warning systems, and evacuation support before the next storm arrives.
In Somalia, federal troops have driven opposition forces out of Baidoa after hours of heavy clashes that left several people dead. Baidoa is one of Somalia's largest cities and is home to hundreds of thousands of people, many of them already displaced by conflict in other parts of the country. The opposition forces were described as loyal to former Southwest State President Abdi Aziz Hassan Mohamed Laftagarin. The fighting adds another layer of instability at a time when Somalia's federal government is already trying to contain the nearly 2-decade Al-Shabaab insurgency and stave off famine. For residents of Baidoa, the immediate concern is safety. Urban fighting can close markets, interrupt aid deliveries, keep children out of school, and force families who have already fled violence to move again. People who arrived in Baidoa seeking shelter from conflict elsewhere now face uncertainty inside the city. Somalia's political disputes are often shaped by tensions between federal and regional authorities, clan alliances, and control over security forces. But for civilians, the test of leadership is simpler. Whether authorities can prevent fighting from spreading, protect displaced people, keep humanitarian routes open, and provide enough stability for communities to rebuild. The federal troops' recapture of the city may pause the immediate confrontation, but it does not resolve the underlying political dispute. De-escalation, local mediation, and protection for civilians will be essential if Baidoa is to avoid becoming another flashpoint in a country already carrying the weight of conflict, hunger, and displacement. The Democratic Republic of Congo says its Ebola outbreak has become the country's deadliest to date, with the official death toll reaching 2,325. Government figures published Monday show the toll has now surpassed the 2018 outbreak. Residents near the epicenter said many people have died since the beginning of May. One resident described people developing symptoms such as headache, fever, or stomachache and dying soon afterward. Ebola is a severe and often deadly disease, and fear can spread quickly when families see neighbors fall ill and when rumors move faster than medical information. The human cost is immense. Behind the official number are parents, children, health workers, and entire communities facing grief, isolation, and disruption. Outbreaks can close schools, empty markets, and strain clinics that may already lack staff, protective equipment, and medicine. People who are sick may hesitate to seek help if they fear being separated from family or stigmatized. The key public health work is clear: identify cases quickly, trace contacts, support safe care, communicate honestly with communities, and protect health workers. In past Ebola outbreaks, progress has depended not only on medical tools but on trust. Families need to understand what symptoms mean, where to seek help, and why precautions are necessary. The rising toll is alarming, but outbreaks can be controlled when public health teams are resourced and communities are treated as partners rather than passive recipients of orders.
Campaigning has begun in Brazil for the October presidential election, with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva seeking re-election and Senator Flávio Bolsonaro emerging as his leading right-wing opponent. The first vote is due on October 4th. If no candidate wins a majority, the top 2 will proceed to a runoff. Lula is running on promises to narrow social gaps, including anti-poverty measures. His campaign message is focused on inequality, a central issue in a country where millions of workers and families still face high living costs, uneven access to services, and regional disparities. Flavio Bolsonaro, the eldest son of former President Jair Bolsonaro, argues that Lula has failed to meet expectations and says he can restore Brazil's credibility abroad. The latest opinion poll cited in the morning broadcasts showed Lula leading Flavio Bolsonaro by 7 percentage points. The race will be closely watched across Latin America and beyond, but the most important consequences will be domestic. Brazil's next president will shape policy on jobs, social spending, the Amazon, public security, education, and relations with major trading partners. For low-income families, pensioners, small farmers, and urban workers, campaign promises will be measured against food prices, wages, public services, and the ability to plan for the future. The start of campaigning also tests Brazil's democratic institutions after years of polarization. A fair election, peaceful participation, and respect for results matter as much as the candidates' platforms. The policy debate is already clear. Whether Brazil continues Lula's emphasis on poverty reduction and social investment, or turns toward the right-wing alternative offered by Bolsonaro.
In Russia, the opposition Yabloko party is appealing a decision that bars it from next month's parliamentary elections. The case has gone to Russia's Supreme Court, and party leader Nikolai Rybakov said at least 35 people who came to attend the open hearing were detained and taken to law enforcement agencies. Rybakov said those detained had not committed any offense. The United Nations is among the bodies calling on Russian authorities to lift the ban. Yabloko is firmly opposed to the war in Ukraine, making its exclusion especially significant in a political system where anti-war voices already face intense pressure. The case matters because elections are not only about voting day. They are also about whether parties can register, campaign, hold meetings, speak to voters, and challenge government policy without fear. When an opposition party is excluded before ballots are cast, voters lose choices before they ever enter a polling place. For Russian citizens, especially those who oppose the war or want alternatives on domestic policy, the shrinking political space has practical consequences. It affects whether grievances can be expressed through legal politics rather than silence, exile, or protest under threat of arrest. The Supreme Court appeal gives Yabloko a formal path to challenge the ban, but the detentions around the hearing underscore the climate-facing opposition supporters. The outcome will be watched as a measure of how much room remains in Russia for lawful dissent, open debate, and electoral competition at a time when the state continues to tighten control over public life.
In Israel, military conscription has become a major political issue as opposition candidates vow to end long-standing exemptions for ultra-Orthodox men. For generations, many ultra-Orthodox Jews have been exempt from service in the Israel Defense Forces so they can study the Torah. Most other able-bodied young Israelis are required to serve, often for up to 3 years, followed by years of reserve duty. The debate has sharpened during a period of prolonged conflict, when many families have sons and daughters serving on active duty or being called up again and again as reservists. A Soldier's Mother's organization is campaigning for eligible ultra-Orthodox men to be included in conscription. One mother involved in the campaign asked why she must hand her son over to the army while other mothers do not. That question captures the emotional core of the issue: who carries the burden of national service, and whether the system treats citizens fairly. Ultra-Orthodox leaders have long argued that religious study is itself a vital contribution to Jewish life and continuity. Opponents of the exemptions say the arrangement is no longer sustainable, especially as the ultra-Orthodox population grows and the military demands on other families increase. The debate touches religion, identity, equality, and security all at once. It also affects the economy because service requirements and exemptions shape education, employment, and public budgets. Any reform would require political care, but the pressure for change is rising. For many Israeli families, the issue is now personal, not theoretical. The burden of service is felt at the kitchen table, in workplaces, and in the long months when reservists are away from home. Follow for a daily world brief. Sources are linked in the description.
That's the world as Minerva saw it.